responders, and not terribly far behind, you got folks who are doing the essential work in supermarkets and pharmacies who are coming into contact with folks, and they just, because of the limited supplies we have nationally, have less personal protective equipment at their disposal, etc.
You've been listening to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy speaking on the state of the coronavirus in his state. Let's take you to Boston now, where Mayor Marty Walsh is addressing the press.
Those are spaces available for folks that need them. As far as construction goes, Boston has a temporary pause on non-emergency construction projects, and that still stands in the city. Like I said earlier, slowing the spread of the virus is our number one focus, and it will continue to remain our number one focus. We're asking construction sites and companies, anyone who has extra gloves, masks, or other protective equipment, if you could donate them to our local health centers. For information on how to donate, go to boston.gov/coronavirus. City services, we're continuing essential city services to keep the city running, but we have significantly decreased the number of staff here at City Hall. Most of our city services are now available online at boston.gov. And no one should be coming to City Hall or any municipal buildings unless they absolutely have to. Yesterday, we have a few additional departments that went to appointment only. The registry, the parking clerk, H Strong, the election department, the city clerk's assessing, collections, the bid counter at public facilities, and inspectional services. All of those services now, you'll have to call in and make an appointment or do it online. Make sure you call ahead to see what's available. And you can find all the information about all these departments and the status of these departments at boston.gov. Like I said earlier, one of the most important things that we can do right now as people is stay home. But the reality is not everyone has a home. To all of our homeless neighbors, we want you to know that we are working around the clock to protect and support you. All of our shelters remain open. We have conducted regular deep cleanings and sanitizing in our facilities. Our street outreach teams are still working every day to engage the people who need them. And I want to make a special thank you to our street outreach workers who are on the front lines and doing incredible work, making sure that our homeless population is getting the attention they need and feel safe. We are creating facilities where people can quarantine, receive care, and recover. 2 of those locations opened this past week next to our shelter in the South End. They provide space for people quarantining and receiving medical attention. We are currently working with local institutions to add more locations for quarantine, care, and temporary housing in Boston. We expect that these additional locations will be operational in the next week, and when they are, I will announce them. We are working closely with the state to repurpose the Newton Pavilion at the Boston Medical Center. We will temporarily reopen to meet the needs of the coronavirus-related medical needs of homeless residents. The capacity we have right now, there is 250 people. We're also staying in close contact with people who are formerly homeless. We know that in this is a very hard time for people, and we want to make sure that everyone has the supports they need to stay healthy and stay housed. Earlier this week, I announced $2.5 million in grants for healthcare for the homeless, Pine Street Inn, Boston Medical Center, to strengthen healthcare system for the homeless population. I want to thank those organizations have been doing incredible work around the clock here in the city of Boston. These organizations were some of the first to receive money from the Boston Resiliency Fund, and we are still accepting donations at boston.gov/resiliencyfund. I also want to make sure people know that the city is hiring for important positions, including homeless counselors, public health advocates, and public safety officers. We're asking you to go to the Boston Public Health Commission's website at bphc.org. That's bphc.org for job listings. And as soon as you get your information in there, we're going to get you interviewed, and we're moving quickly on that. Right now, lots of people are worried about housing security. The first of the month is coming up, and the city is working hard to ensure that both tenants and homeowners can stay in their home during this crisis. We have worked with housing advocates, property owners, and the Boston Housing Authority to halt eviction proceedings, and we appreciate the state following suit. It may also be possible to defer your mortgage payments. I know the banks are working on options right now, and I'm recommending people call your lenders to ask them the question. If you don't call the banks and put yourself on notice there. There's nothing they can do after the fact. They've told me that. So we want on credit cards and mortgage payments. Make sure you call the banks to see about deferments. Our Boston Home Center also remains open to provide guidance. For more information, we're asking people to go to homecenter.boston.gov. Before I open it up for questions, I just have one last message for the people of Boston. This is a very challenging and difficult time for a lot of us. I'm asking people to be kind to each other. This is an unprecedented public health emergency. Many, many people are stressed. Everyone is doing their best. It's never been more important that we support each other. And remember this, the virus doesn't discriminate, neither should we. This is not a time for scapegoating. It's not a time for stigmatizing anyone. We've heard about bullying, harassment, and racism around our country. I certainly won't stand for it in Boston. It's not who we are. It's also important to remember that we can't get through this crisis without our immigrant neighbors and their contributions. 16% of all healthcare workers in the United States are immigrants. 36% of all home health aides in America are immigrants. 29%.
So you've been listening to Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, of course, giving an update on the virus situation in his city. At this time of day, it's not uncommon for us to hear from mayors and governors, certainly around the country, and in particular in the New York metropolitan area on the East Coast, where you're seeing some of the hardest hit situations, and of course the epicenter here in New York when it comes to the coronavirus. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. Let's get a quick check on the markets, if we may, on this Friday, because, Jason, we're certainly seeing, I heard Charlie say it earlier, a little bit of a market fatigue after 3 days of gain. So the Dow right now down about 2.6%, 580 points to the downside, 21,969 is the trade. S&P down about 58 points, down 2.2%. Same percentage decline on the NASDAQ, down 2.2%, 177 points to the downside. I will point out, though, those equity market averages, because of those 3 days that we saw some very strong gains, you are seeing the overall market up for the week. But we got to talk a little bit about what's going on out of D.C.
Absolutely. And one of our go-to voices down there, of course, is Stephen Dennis. He covers the Congress and the Senate specifically. He's been following the comings and goings, literally and figuratively, of the Congress finally passing this bill. It's heading to the president. Stephen joins us from Maryland. All right, Mr. D, what did we see today? A big day.
A lot of drama on the House floor, but ultimately a very strong, sort of historic moment. You had a majority of the House had to show up to get this through the House because Thomas Massie, a Republican of Kentucky, was going to try and insist on a roll call vote. He tried to, but they shut him down, and they needed to have a majority there to say no roll call vote, that they'll just pass it by a voice vote. He was the only House member to stand up and say, hey, we need to record our votes here at a time when there are now several members of the House who have contracted the virus and therefore unable to attend. And you also have medical professionals saying, hey, gathering in large groups, traveling is not recommended. Traveling from New York is not recommended. So you had a lot of bipartisan anger from the president, from John Kerry on Twitter, all sorts of things directed at Massey's way. But he was saying, look, in the Constitution, we should come here and show up and vote on this stuff. But not a whole lot of love for Mr. Massey from his colleagues today.
Or John Kerry. We can't repeat what he tweeted, former Secretary of State and Democratic nominee. I mean, kind of amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, this week has seen some of the usual partisan sniping over how the bill was drafted and who delayed it and who didn't, and various pieces of the bill. But there have been a number of moments this week that actually were remarkably unified and bipartisan. Beating up on Thomas Massie was one on Twitter and in person. Another is just this bill. I mean, basically, you have one or two members of Congress who didn't, who said they would have voted against it. No members of the Senate said they would have voted against it. And this is the most expensive rescue package ever. And I think that says a lot about where the country is right now. They want the government to come in and save the day, essentially, as they see their jobs and their bottom lines melting away here.
So, Steve, what I do wonder is, folks have said this is the third, phase of a stimulus package to help out individuals, to help out businesses across the United States. Many expect there'll be a phase 4 and phase 5. Will Congress, as more and more members of Congress seem to be being impacted by the virus, what are you hearing about how they are adjusting to making sure they can get what needs to be done in the government to make sure we can get out of this crisis? But at the same time, they too, as individuals, are facing a health crisis.
Yeah, and there is a big dispute inside Congress right now over whether to allow remote voting or things like remote voting, or to change the rules so that it takes more than just a few members or one member of Congress to force what happened today in the House or in the Senate. The leadership has been very reluctant to change the rules, so I think it would take more than this to change the rules. But as more and more members get sick, this could get much, much worse. So, those discussions are ongoing. There's nothing really settled about it. Right now, the Senate's projected to come back April 20th. I'm not sure they can stay away that long.
Right.
There may be requests to fix things in this bill and to do additional things. There's so much going on. Every few days, this thing has seen exponential growth. And even this package that the president will sign this afternoon, $2.2 trillion. A week ago, it was $1 trillion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how fast things are moving, and we don't know where things are going to be in a week or 2 weeks. They're sort of guessing. Okay, well, maybe we'll bend the curve, but you listen to a Bill Gates, and he says, "Look, we're looking at maybe the end of April before we're bending the curve." So, as far as when we open up the economy, this is going to be a big fight over the next several weeks.
Yeah, I thought I heard from New York, too, that it was going to be was it 21 days or something before they see it?
Yeah, certainly a ways to go. What have we learned, Stephen Dennis, about the leadership here? Because obviously this took both sides of the aisle, as you alluded to earlier, and clearly the leaders in both houses to get this done. And another key figure in all of this continues to be the Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, who will have a huge amount of power over this rescue package going forward, right?
Yeah, there are very few people in Washington that have any level of trust right now when it comes to negotiating, et cetera. Trump was not on the phone with Pelosi much, right? They don't really get along. The person who was talking to Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, Kevin McCarthy was Mnuchin. And so it really, a lot does rest on Mnuchin's shoulders right now to both implement this and to also sort of negotiate these compromises. There wasn't a whole lot of trust, and one of the reasons why the bill got held up is that initial bill just sort of handed him a blank check and handed the administration a bunch of blank checks. And the Democrats were like, hey, we need an oversight board, at least what we had in TARP, right? And so they got that, and they got some more strings attached on who can benefit and that sort of thing. And they also added hundreds of billions of dollars in spending on stuff that they wanted, including hospitals. This was a bipartisan bill. If you look at this bill and you read it, it takes a long time to read. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there that Republicans wanted, that businesses wanted, business tax breaks, et cetera. There's also the biggest unemployment insurance package in history. Yeah. A quarter of $1 trillion just for unemployment insurance. It's a huge number. But, we're looking at a situation with 3 million unemployed people this week. They're going to spend that money, right? They need that money. Because otherwise, what are they going to do? Go out and try to find a job when they're being told to stay at home?
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
So one thing I'm curious about, too, and I think everybody is about the logistics, and Jason keeps throwing out a word, and he's right, the mechanics of how this all works. The assistance doesn't get to people and businesses right away, does it?
I think the thing that a lot of your listeners are wondering about, especially if you're a small business owner or you've just been laid off by a small business owner, is how does it help me right now? And the answer is, within a week or so, the banks are going to be trying to give you money from the federal government. I mean, there's $350 billion package here of lending to small businesses that turns into grants. That is $10 million potentially per small business in free money. They need to figure this out, how they can get it from their bank, how they can qualify. Ultimately, it means they have to maintain their payrolls. They have to keep paying the bills. But this is free money. I mean, this is something, if you have a small business of any size, you need to figure this out. You need to be calling your banker and getting in line.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, too. I mean, we heard just a few minutes ago, Stephen, from the mayor of Boston, essentially saying to people, if you want mortgage forgiveness, if you want certain things that are now on the table, you got to go and apply. And so those logistics, those mechanics are going to become more and more important for sure. And you do wonder how the word gets out to everyone. I know media folks are trying to do that, but you wonder what the communication will be going forward, because this is, as you say, just a massive plan and a massive pot of money.
Free banker in America. I mean, if you are working at one of the big banks, one of the small banks, one of the credit unions, a lot of them, hundreds of them, are already sort of geared up for this SBA program. They're already sort of in the loop, but the Treasury Secretary is trying to make it so that within a week, every FDIC bank can make these loans within a day.
Right.
A lot of times these SBA processes take weeks, take months, etc. There's no interest in that. The interest here is to have this money go out as fast as possible. The government is trying to give you money as fast as possible, but that's going to require businesses to sort of get their act together so they know what they have to take to the banker,
right,
what expenses they have to show, etc.
All right. Well, good stuff. We know we'll be talking to you again as this evolves. Stephen Dennis, you have been invaluable to us and our listeners. We really appreciate it. Hope you get to catch your breath this weekend now that the House has voted and moved this on to the president's desk. Stephen Dennis, one of our congressional reporters covering the Senate down in the nation's capital. Let's get to Charlie Pellet now. He's got a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hi, thank you very much. Here's what's going on. Jason Kelly, stocks lower across the board. On track, though, for a winning week. Right now, the S&P is down 60. That is a drop of 2.3%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 593 points, down 2.6%. To put that decline in perspective, at the worst level of the day, the Dow had been down almost 1,100 points. NASDAQ lower now by 177. That is a drop of 2.3%. The 10-year, the yield there, 0.73%. We've got gold down 0.6%, $16.20 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude now dropping by 4.3%, $21.61 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Catherine Mann is a global chief economist at Citigroup Global Markets. She was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance talking about stimulus.
There's 50% of the economy that does not doesn't borrow through bonds or through equities, and it's 50% of the economy, both the businesses and the workers. Those are the parts that I really worry about, because it's much more difficult to get money to them.
Another tough day for a lot of the airline stocks. Southwest Airlines, for example, says it's losing, quote, big money on every flight, raising the risk of worker furloughs in the longer term, despite billions of dollars in immediate aid from the U.S. government. Southwest Airlines shares, they are down now by 9.2%. Also retreating today, Delta down 4.6%. We've got American Airlines Group down 7.8%. JetBlue tumbling by 8.4%. Again, the yield on the 10-year, 0.73%. Gold down 0.6 at $16.21 the ounce. Crude down 4.1%, $21.67. Recapping, equities lower, S&P down 57, a drop of 2.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So as we mentioned at the top of our broadcast, certainly one of the themes that we are seeing is what's going on with food and restaurants. They are especially hard hit. Chris Pappas is chairman, president, and CEO of the Chef's Warehouse. It's a distributor of specialty food products. They sell to restaurants, hotels, cruise lines, casinos, food specialty stores, and more. So they are on the front line of certainly seeing the impact of the coronavirus. He joins us right now on the phone from Ridgefield, Connecticut. Chris, nice to have you here. First of all, tell us a little bit about your world. We hope you and your family are safe. Tell us a little bit about your employees, how everyone's doing.
Thank you. Obviously, this was like, a nuclear bomb for the whole hospitality industry. And, it's obviously not easy for all our customers. We sell over 35,000 of the top chefs in the country. And most of these restaurants today are closed. So, we started meeting. I have an unbelievable staff. And we got together and started thinking, so, what do we do? We know the retail supply chains are really being challenged right now. We're getting thousands of phone calls from people saying, how do I buy from you people? We know you have 1,000 trucks and warehouses full of food. So we've quickly pivoted. We've got our food safety teams out there and say, how do we keep our employees safe? How do we get some trucks on the road? How do we get food to people? They're going to want it delivered. And we really quickly transformed ourselves right now into a supplying retailers and going right to the consumer through our websites, whether it be our sites for Allen Brothers, our AllenBrothers.com, which cuts the best steaks for the most famous steakhouses around the country, to our ChefWarehouse.com. We've added a new site that says Shop at Home. So we keep adding more and more items. It's impossible to put all 35,000 items in 1 week available. So what we decided was to tone it down, not to offer 200 different types of olive oil, get it down to a really good selection. The team that's at Chef, because we are pressed with supplying the best chefs in the world, we're food experts. So I think the consumer could feel comfortable that maybe they never heard of us before, but our reputation over 35 years supplying the best chefs in the world, they could feel comfortable that they're buying from someone who understands food safety, right. Understands quality, and we've quickly put up new sites that they can come online and they can either get it through UPS. People are loading up their freezers right now with steaks and lamb chops and really great food that they would normally eat in a steakhouse. And they're also starting to order to their homes an array of, I think we have a few hundred items up already, and every day we'll keep adding, and we'll keep adding new cities and neighborhoods that the trucks will be rolling. They can get online, they could pay with a credit card, and we're trying to do it within, 1 to 3 days. We will be at their door with the greatest ingredients you could find.
Well, it's an amazing pivot, as they say. I mean, this is really impressive, and we appreciate you giving us all the details there. I do want to ask you, Chris, given that you do work with some of the best-known chefs in the world, we're talking about Thomas Keller, Dan Barber, Nancy Silverton, Daniel Ballou, who will be a guest on this program next week. I should point out Jose Andres, obviously, who's been very vocal about this. As you talk to those folks, you know them well. What are they saying about the future of restaurants, the short-term and mid-term future?
Yeah, well, short term, I think, everybody is still spinning, very upset with the insurance companies. We should have, business interruption. Every restaurant should get business interruption. If this isn't business interruption, I don't know what is. So they're pushing that. I know they're on the phone with the White House. So I spoke to Thomas. I spoke to Danielle the other day, Jean-Georges, and they're sitting there and they're pushing. And the sun will come out, and that's why Chef, we're doing everything we can. Our 35th anniversary, didn't plan this would be the way we celebrated it, but we're going to be here for the next 35 years, and they depend on us. When the sun comes out, they'll start slowly, and as it builds and people feel more comfortable going out, we are social animals. I've been doing this for 35 years. And I watch people love to go to restaurants, and they love to meet and have family gatherings and bar mitzvahs and christenings and weddings and you name it.
Well,
it will come back.
Chris, I do wonder about when we get on the other side of this, that certainly the restaurant industry, I mean, I saw one number, was it like 15.6 million workers in the U.S. restaurant industry? That is huge, but I do wonder about the safety nets that are there for those kinds of workers. What changes on the other side? What can realistically change? I mean, the restaurant business, it's a hard one.
It's always been a hard business, but, people are resilient. Americans are resilient. I've been through 9/11. I've been through the financial crashes, and I'm always amazed how people come back to restaurants. As soon as they're feeling a little better about themselves.
But what financially can change to help some of those workers? I mean, what in the business or the financial structure of a restaurant industry, or whether it's insurance, like you said, what needs to change so that those workers, I feel like this crisis is showing us really some of the weak spots in our society, and certainly within our worker society. So what needs to change?
Sure. Well, you could see, again, most of the restaurants have closed down. Most of their employees are on unemployment, so they are receiving money. And they're talking about a package where especially small businesses can get up to, I think, 3 times their payroll to keep their employees employed. So I think the government absolutely has to do something as well as with the insurance companies. But when we went through 9/11, it was amazing how generous society is. And that's what we're doing right now in this new business. We give over 7 figures of money away to charities every year. The hospitality industry is so charitable, and I think that people are going to rally. I see a lot of restaurants with GoFundMe pages for their employees. We're going to be donating a portion of our money. We want to double that the amount that we were able to give last year through new initiatives to raise money to take care of, especially all the people on the front end of this that are most, that it hurts the most.
Vulnerable.
So I think you're going to have a tremendous rally of generosity and fundraisers, and we got to put these people back to work, and America needs its restaurants.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We know it's incredibly busy, especially as you launch this entirely new business in a lot of ways. Chris Pappas is the chairman and CEO of the Chef's Warehouse, joining us on the phone from Ridgefield, Connecticut. Carol, so interesting. I mean, this is at the crux of what we've been talking about. This industry, truly one of the most affected by this massive, massive crisis.
Yeah, exactly. So good to hear from him and get some input on what is happening and what can be done. Let's get to World and National News headlines and to Bob Lane. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Jason, again, good day to you. Acting with exceptional resolve in an extraordinary time, the House has rushed President Trump a $2.2 trillion rescue package, tossing a life preserver to a U.S. economy and healthcare system reeling from the coronavirus pandemic.
A quorum is present. The motion is adopted.
The largest stimulus package in U.S. history is now headed to President Trump for his signature. Hundreds of House members traveled back to Washington to overcome the demand from one Republican to hold a recorded vote. The House passed the $2 trillion package by voice vote this afternoon after the Senate's 96-0 vote Wednesday to approve the measure. The House did hold a debate before putting the measure to a vote, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
Committee chairman outlined the provisions of the bill, including Representative Rosa DeLauro.
Last week, more than 3 million filed for unemployment. So the hour is dark. But today, the Congress is ready to help get families, workers, and the country to the dawn of recovery.
Ranking Republican Steve Shabbat of the Small Business Committee.
Small businesses and their employees often rise before the sun and retire under the stars to ensure that their customers' needs are met and often exceeded. I want you to know that there is help in this bill.
Mostly, but not entirely, they avoided criticizing the other side while noting some compromises they wish they didn't have to make. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's determined to remain in charge of the UK's coronavirus response. He's the first leader of a major nation to test positive for COVID-19. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Are you interested? The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
At Asda, you can put all your eggs in one basket. Get 3 Easter eggs for just £8, like a Cadbury Twirl, Caramel Freddo, or our Asda Free-From White Chocolate Egg. Easter egg faves without shelling out. Asda. Selected stores online, subject to availability. Eggs £3 each, 115 to 262 grams.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
Well, there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all in retreat on this Friday. Looking like an up week, though, with the S&P 500 index falling 58 points today, now at 2571. That is a drop of just about 2.2%. We've got the Dow down 622 points, down 2.8%. Have been down as many as almost 1,100 points in the early going. NASDAQ down now by 178 points, lower by 2.2%. 10-year, the yield there 0.73%. We've got gold down 0.6%, $16.22 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude pulling back by 3.8%, $21.74 a barrel on West Texas Intermediate crude. Again, recapping here, S&P down 58. That is a drop of 2.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, around this time every day, Carol, we've been trying to go to a medical expert to really help keep us honest about where we are, what we should be doing just as human beings to try and get through this. Get smart about the medical aspects, but also the social aspects of this. No better person to talk about than Dr. Patrice Harris. She's the president of the American Medical Association, joining us on the phone from Atlanta. Dr. Harris, great to have you with us.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you.
All right. So here we are, Carol and I, working from our respective homes. You know, we're working for a company like many that basically is saying, don't come into the office, social distancing. Help us understand what we know so far. I know it hasn't been a super long time. It's been a couple weeks for a lot of us here in the New York area. What are we learning about whether we are, in fact, going to flatten this curve?
So let me start with the end point. Social distancing works. Physical distancing works. Certainly we all hear about what's going on in New York. As I sit here in Atlanta, our ICU beds are at or near full capacity, and we see the cases spike in New Orleans. And so it is important for everyone to know. People may not appreciate that individual actions lead to collective impact. And if everyone commits to staying at home, of course, you know, going out for groceries or medical needs, medicines. But if everyone stays at home when they can, they are not only helping themselves, but they are helping the medical community.
So when you hear the president say, let's talk about creating zones around the country, some of them not as hard hit, and thinking about reopening the economy, what do you think? What do you say?
Well, here's what we are all going to have to commit to. We are going to have to commit to being led by the science and the evidence and the data. There's no question. We all want things to open back up, but that has to be defined and determined by the data. And as I heard Dr. Fauci say, we just don't have the data to make those decisions right now. And certainly we want to try to guard against a false choice here, public health versus the economy. We're either going to choose to follow the science and the evidence and save lives, or ignore the science and evidence, and lives will be lost.
So, Dr. Harris, let me ask you this, because part of what you're saying, which I certainly believe in, and I know Carol does too, and many of our listeners do, is this notion of the most important thing you can do, this proactive thing, is to stay home. And yet, I think a lot of us feel like, but are there other things we can be doing, even from the safety and hopefully for most people, sort of comfort of their homes, to somehow help out? Are there places we should be supporting financially? Are there things that we can be doing from a distance to help this along?
Well, certainly each individual locale will be different, but people are talking about while we are at home, if you can. And I want to say not everybody will be able to. Another conversation, not the subject of today, is we have to appreciate that there's a diversity of needs out there.
Yes.
For instance, I'll just give you a quick example and get back on topic, but we talk about hand washing, and we know folks who are homeless, don't have hot running water. There's a group in Atlanta that filled up some water tanks and is going out to the homeless in Atlanta to do that. So we have to appreciate that. But the other things that we can do is, again, check on a neighbor. I've heard folks talk about buying a gift card from a restaurant. Certainly, they can get the money now and then can be used later once we get through this piece. Make sure you stay connected. You could, if you're healthy and no risk factors, and maybe you have a neighbor or a family member who is elderly or is in a risk factor, maybe a grocery shop. When you grocery shop for yourself and your family, grocery shop for them. So those are the other things that we can do.
That's a good one.
I do want to mention a headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. A top U.S. regulator is exploring whether to throw a lifeline to mortgage servicers that are stressed by the coronavirus pandemic, thinking about tapping a program meant to address natural disasters. So watching that, we're talking about Ginnie Mae, and they're weighing that disaster aid relief for virus-hit mortgage servicers. And Jason, this speaks to that very big story that if people aren't paying mortgages or don't have the ability, there is a trickle-down effect.
Yes.
And then this health crisis becomes more of a financial crisis. We are talking with Dr. Patrice Harris, president of the American Medical Association, on the phone from Atlanta. Dr. Harris, your members, you guys represent the physicians across the countries, but you also, are tapped into the drug makers, the healthcare industry in a big way. Are we getting to a point where our system is going to be overstressed and doctors will be making some critical decisions about who gets what equipment because we just don't have enough?
Well, certainly that's one of the reasons we want to be proactive about the number of ventilators, which is why the American Medical Association has called on the president to use all levers of government to be proactive, and particularly the Defense Production Act, to make sure we have the number of ventilators. I do know that there's been a conversation around making choices. I can tell you that at the American Medical Association, we have a code of medical ethics that talks and speaks to what to do when there are scarce resources, and that information is available on our website. But hospitals and health systems are having these conversations ahead of time and developing policies, and that's as it should be.
Should the president, though, impose the Defense Production Act? We just did a story about General Motors, and, there are companies out there in the private sector who are ready to go and ramp up to make ventilators and so on, and yet there's a lot of confusion because the president hasn't done that. What conversation have you had with him or the AMA to do this? And do you think it would be the right thing to do at this point?
Yes, we know. It's my understanding that the president has signed the act, but we have communicated in writing and in other media forms to please invoke, activate, whatever the appropriate term is, the Defense Production Act. And also, by the way, we have asked for a national tracking system. And right now, as you're aware, it's sort of ad hoc. But it would be, I think, much more productive to, have database or tracking system where we know who has what, who needs what, and then we can prioritize. So we hope that the president activates that and also develops a tracking system.
Dr. Harris, just 30 seconds left, but I have to ask you, you're a psychiatrist. What can we do from a mental health perspective for ourselves right now?
Well, just a couple of things. First of all, it's an important conversation to have because a poll released by the American Psychiatric Association just the other day revealed that folks are experiencing anxiety. And so I would encourage everyone to practice self-care, try to get as much sleep as they can, get some activity, even if it's walking around your neighborhood or putting on your favorite record to dance. And sometimes you have to stay informed, but sometimes you have to take a break from the news and social media.
All right. Well, that's very, very good advice. We really appreciate your time. Hope you'll come back and join us. Dr. Patrice Harris, president of the American Medical Association, joining us on the phone from Atlanta. Carol?
Yeah, all right. Coming up, folks, we're going to get a check on the bond market, take a look at some of the economic news, take a look at some of the stresses and relief that we're seeing in the credit markets. This is Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg.
That saying?
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
A few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading in this headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. President Trump will sign the coronavirus aid bill at 4 p.m. at the White House. So a 4 o'clock Wall Street time signing at the White House of the coronavirus aid bill. Stocks are moving lower with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all very much in retreat, but well off session lows. Right now, a 45-point drop in the S&P 500 index. It is down 1.5%. 0.7%. We've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 509 points, a decline right now of 2.3%. And NASDAQ is down 150 points. That is a drop of 1.9%. 10-year up 1 2/32. The yield on the 10-year 0.73%. Gold is down 0.3%, $16.26 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.8% right now, $21.74 a barrel. So the S&P 500 index still heading for the best week in 11 years, though it does remain 25% off of its February record. Alicia Levine is chief strategist at BNY Mellon, and she's worried that all the market turbulence could affect an entire generation of potential investors.
I fear that this will make the future generations of investors cautious about investing in the market, because when you have up 10% and down 10% in 1 week, it doesn't feel like investing. It feels like Las Vegas, and that concerns me, that these kind of wild swings.
Sources say Hertz Global Holdings is discussing options with banks to raise cash as the rental car company seeks to weather a worldwide slowdown in travel. Hertz shares tumbling today by 12.7%. A lot of other travel-related stocks are lower. Sources tell Bloomberg Carnival Corp, that's the cruise line operator, is in talks to raise as much as $7 billion in new debt as the cruise ship line seeks to shore up its finances amid a halt on global travel. Carnival shares plunging another 18.5%. Among some of the other cruise names today, we've got Royal Caribbean down 14.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, a busy Friday after one heck of a week. Well, clearly we've been watching the markets, but we've also been closely listening to members of the Federal Reserve. A couple presidents interviewed by our Bloomberg team today. Let's listen in as we hear from Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Robert Kaplan and Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic.
All the bills, including the fiscal bills, are to keep individuals functioning and being able to pay their bills, small businesses functioning, municipalities functioning, larger businesses functioning, so that when the virus is defeated, we can walk and then we can run and then we can sprint out of this.
There's the possibility that once the public health crisis is gotten under control and we don't have that issue anymore, the economy may rebound actually quite robustly.
All right, so that was Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Robert Kaplan and Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic speaking exclusively with Bloomberg's Mike McKee. So good to get them weighing in on what's going on and what the Fed has been doing. Alex Harris, I want to bring in Alex, have her weigh in on this as well. Bond reporter at Bloomberg News on the phone from Long Island City, Queens. Yelena Shletyeva, also with us, senior U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics. She's joining us on the phone as well from New York or outside the city. So, Yelena, let me start with you. Great interviews by our Mike McKee. Take together what they said and what you're seeing in terms of how the economy is functioning, and what conclusions do you make at this point?
Well, basically the Fed speakers told us that the economy is going to rebound sharply once the crisis is over. I'm not necessarily going to say, no, that's not going to be the case, but I will be a little bit more skeptical for the following reasons. So, sure, consumer spending can jumpstart quite quickly after the crisis is over, but business investment will certainly lag because companies lost a lot of money. They have already lost a lot of money, and we will see that in corporate profits going forward. So if you don't have the means to spend, you just simply won't. And that means that probably business investment will continue to be really weak, if not declining, maybe into the second half of the year. So that will mean that economic growth will continue to be weak, even if it becomes a little bit positive when the crisis is over.
So, Alex, come on in here. You know, watching the bond market all week, talking to investors. How does that jive with what you just heard from those couple of Fed presidents?
You know, Jason, it's funny because there were some other comments actually that I think have struck the markets, at least on the fixed income side, more than that. It's the front end. It's the funding markets. You know, Bostic, there was a headline from him earlier this morning, you know, about tools being in place, but, you know, there's still, and the Fed doing what they can, but there's still some pockets of the market that are still stuck. Most notably, the commercial paper market right now is still a bit frozen, and you can see that is still putting some pressure on these upward, you know, short-term funding rates like LIBOR and then the LIBOR OIS spread, and that's what people are sort of waiting for, and they want to see that market sort of unthaw, because that'll help a lot here, not just, you know, in terms of, you know, investment for prime money market funds, but at least for businesses as well, because they're having to pay much higher rates than, say, you know, a bank that can go to the discount window or a bank that can use the Fed swap lines here. So that's another big part of this is getting that market unstuck here.
And Alex, remind us, I mean, the commercial paper market is so important to corporations. This is, you know, short-term access to capital, right? And this is what they've often used to meet payrolls and so on and so forth. So if that market starts to seize up, that's problematic.
Exactly. You know, and one of the things, and this is what the Fed's programs are trying to do right now, and why they've been so focused on the money market funds as well, is so prime money market funds tend to buy like those higher risk short-term assets like commercial paper, and they haven't wanted to. You know, they're facing their own redemptions, and, you know, so they've been trying to make sure they have enough liquidity on hand so that they're not, you know, there's no run on them, and they have to go to impose any sort of fees and lock up money. So they've stopped really buying, and because you have no buyers, like, who are you going to sell to? So, you know, that's one of the Fed's big priorities, and we see that with the money market facility that started this week. We actually had about 30 to 31 billion in usage there, and today actually someone told me that they're starting to see your first inflows back into these funds, and so people are starting to feel a little bit more optimistic, you know, that, okay, maybe things are starting to move here, and in the next couple of weeks we'll really kind of get going. So that's why this is such a big deal for them to get them moving.
Yeah. Alex, I think that's a very good point. And in fact, we expect the central bank will expand the existing special lending facilities probably over the weekend or on Monday, because the only thing that was limiting further expansion of existing lending facilities and perhaps introducing the new ones, such as Main Street lending facility to help small businesses, for example, was really limited by how much backstop the Fed was getting from the Treasury Department. But now with the passage of the fiscal package, we might see an expansion of those lending programs and perhaps a deeper more help on existing issues like you mentioned.
Right, because in that package, Yelena, right, just quickly, 30 seconds here, is, I mean, there's funding for the Fed to be able to kind of leverage it, right, and
absolutely.
And embrace these markets.
Yes, the Treasury almost exhausted the Exchange Stabilization Fund that it has been utilizing in order to provide equity toward those Fed lending facilities. So now the fiscal package will help replenish that fund, and the Fed will provide more help.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you both so much. Yelena Shalecheva,
stay safe, guys.
U.S. economist, senior U.S. economist, I should say, for Bloomberg Economics. Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg, both joining us on the phone. Let's get to Bob Moon now for world and national headlines. Hit it, Bob.
Jason, Carol, it appears to be a cautionary tale from China. Movie theaters across that country were closed for months until this week, when a couple hundred here and there started reopening. And about 200 in Shanghai were set to open tomorrow. Now, though, all movie theaters are closed again by order of the government. According to reports, officials haven't said exactly what prompted the reclosures or if there was a new coronavirus outbreak. Reopening theaters was an encouraging sign that things might be starting to get back to normal in China. Now there's no word when normalcy might return.
Pursuant to House Resolution 911,
The previous question is ordered on the motion. The question is on adoption of the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Hundreds of House members rushed back to Washington to approve that $2.2 trillion virus response package on a voice vote, sending it to President Trump for his signature a little less than an hour from now at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Strong majorities of both parties lined up behind the most colossal economic relief bill in the nation's history. Officials say a fire in a shopping cart on a New York City subway train early today led to the death of a conductor and injuries to at least 9 other people. Fires were reported at 3 other stations along the same subway line, and authorities are investigating whether one person set all of them in an act of vandalism. The train had just pulled into a station in Harlem near the north end of Central Park around 3 a.m. when a transit worker discovered the fire. The 36-year-old conductor who died was helping passengers to safety. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
At Asda, you can put all your eggs in one basket. Get 3 Easter eggs for just £8, like a Cadbury Twirl, Caramel Freddo, or our Asda Free From White Chocolate Egg. Easter egg faves without shelling out. Asda. Selected stores online, subject to availability. Eggs £3 each, 115 to 262 grams.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Smokey's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned a PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks lower across the board, a 32-point drop for the S&P 500 index, but that is well off our session lows. Right now, the S&P is down 1.2%. U.S. stocks pairing declines after Congress passed a $2 trillion stimulus package meant to blunt the economic impact of the coronavirus. President Trump says he's going to sign it 4 p.m. Wall Street time at the White House. Treasuries gained, oil slipped. The 10-year up 1 9/32 yield, now 0.71%. We've got West Texas Intermediate crude down 4.2%, 21.66 a barrel. Barrel of Brent down 6%, 24.75. Gold down 0.2%, 16.27 the ounce. S&P lower by 32, down 1.2%. The Dow down 382 points, a drop there of 1.7%. And NASDAQ down 123 points, a decline there of 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. Our Bloomberg Business Week food editor, Kate Crater, writing this week about how the golden age of restaurants may be over because of the coronavirus. Earlier, we talked with the CEO of the Chef's Warehouse and really got a firsthand indication of how stressed this industry is. Kate joins us now along with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber, both of them on the phone. Joel, we've been talking with Kate a lot. I mean, the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry, they've really been hit hard.
I mean, understatement, I think, really. And I think as Kate and Richard Vines write in this story, keep in mind the context for restaurants. The past few decades have just been just literally this golden age where we've just seen restaurants come into their own. Chefs have become effectively celebrities. And here comes a coronavirus that suddenly means that you're not eating in restaurants. And this is not just a New York or London phenomenon. It's like almost a global one at this point. And even pivots to delivery or takeout have been hamstrung. So it's really this existential moment for restaurants and about how they're going to actually even make it through this. And Kate, what is the future, according to the people that you've talked to, what does the future of restaurants start to look like now?
I mean, the future is so uncertain. It's really, as you say, it's just heartbreaking. And it seemed like restaurants were always there for you, and it seriously has been the golden age for maybe 3 decades now, building and unstoppable, and suddenly stopped in its tracks. But there's definitely a feeling, certainly restaurants are trying to pivot to takeout, some with more success than others, but there's so many safety concerns now. A lot of chefs, like I got to talk to Jonathan Waxman, who's the beloved master from Barbudo, and he had this fantastic takeout service going for maybe like a week, 2 weeks, and he shut it down. He was like, it's not safe.
And so, Kate, it's so interesting because, we were talking to Chris Pappas earlier, who I know you've spoken to a lot about what he's doing with Chef's Warehouse. And he was talking about some of the, very famous chefs that he supplies to and sort of how they're both individually and collectively dealing with this. I mean, the economics have so radically changed here, and that filters through not just obviously to diners like us, but to the owners, the operators, and the workers. What are the good things that are being done at this point? Because I know you're seeing a lot of them.
I mean, well, there's like little silver linings, and also it must be said, the package that was passed today is very good for employees to be seeing what it means for restaurants, but definitely in terms of like unemployment for people who went from paycheck to being desperate. It's very good news for them right now. But chefs are, some of them have turned their restaurants into corner stores, and they even have toilet paper that they're selling along with bottles of wine and their takeout food. But we're actually going to do a story on it next week with Chris Pappas from Chef's Warehouse about how the fact that chefs aren't buying caviar and fancy cheeses and pastas and wagyu beef anymore means that consumers can get them at a discount. So look out for that story next week.
Kate, you're talking to, Danny Meyer. you're talking to all these big, Dan Barber, the chef and co-owner of Blue Hill. I mean, these folks, Danny Meyer, you say, was forced to lay off 80% of his workforce, or 2,000 people. Dan Barber saying this is the worst hard time. I mean, these are individuals who've been through 9/11. They've been through the 87 Black Friday crash. They've been through the AIDS epidemic. They've been through so many crises that our society has faced. And yet this is like no other.
I mean, Danny Meyer's always has something to say. He really is always glass half full, and he is devastated. He actually, for him to lay off one person is hard. He had to lay off 80% of his workforce, which is sort of systematic of what's going on in the restaurant industry right now. And so, Jonathan Waxman said he's seen like the financial crash, the AIDS crisis, so many things, and this is by far the worst he's ever seen.
And of course, right? I mean, like, this speaks to just how devastating this particular scenario is, where we're just seeing the service sector be the one that takes it on the nose here. Usually, recessions, and we have this in the current issue of the magazine in our eco section, usually recessions start basically with the manufacturing sector. So the fact that this is hitting service so hard is going to be really one of the memorable things about this particular predicament. And when you think about all the cascading effects here, obviously, like, going out to restaurants is sort of out of the question at the moment. But you think about, restaurants still have to pay leases, and leases mean commercial real estate. And commercial real estate will be heavily impacted by this, as much as, frankly, residential is going to be there too, because people are suddenly losing jobs and not able to pay their mortgages. But we haven't seen a commercial real estate catastrophe that looks like this before, and restaurants will be a big reason for that.
I think this is going to be really bad. I think this is going to be really bad for cities like New York and San Francisco that have had relatively high rent. The restaurant workers can barely afford to pay anyway. And I think now, with no restaurant, even when it comes back, I think a lot of workers are going to say, "Why am I even living here? Like, why don't I just go home to Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Mississippi,
I think that's
or whatever?"
Right, Kate. I think it's right. I'm increasingly thinking that this is going to be this great reset button for many different ways that we look at our life and asset classes and all kinds of stuff. And I think you're right. Like, one thing that the last decade has really shown is that when you have a monetary event-driven rescue package. If you have capital, it was really good to you.
Yeah.
And this could be like that breaking point that a lot of people go, you know what? I need to reevaluate everything.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Joel Weber, editor of Bloomberg Businessweek. Kate Crater, our food expert for Bloomberg and Bloomberg Pursuits. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are trimming their losses in the final hour, but the market remains on track to end the day lower, ending its three-session winning streak, its first since February. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 419, the S&P 500 down 35, the Nasdaq Composite down 129. GM and ventilator maker Ventec Life Systems say they're nearly set to begin production. The ventilators will be available to all buyers after the companies failed to come to terms with the federal government. They'll be available starting in April. Americans are increasingly worried as COVID-19 tightens its grip on the economy. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index fell this month to a 3-year low. The monthly drop was the largest since 2008. Microsoft is acquiring 5G software maker Affirm Network. Sources say it's a $1.3 billion deal. Microsoft announced the purchase without giving details. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
We go there.
Talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Sunday night at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, we're going to get you to the close of trading on this busy week. Carol, stocks taking a breather, falling back a little bit, however you want to characterize it, but important to get that. And we will have the signing of that CARES bill from the president after the close of trading as well.
All right, and coming up in just a moment, we'll get to that chart of the day. First up, though, back to your top business stories, and let's talk a little bit more about today's trading session. Hi, Charlie Powell.
Well, hello there once again. Happy Friday. What a week it has been. We've got 28 minutes to go ahead of the close, and you got to keep it locked into Bloomberg Radio. We are seeing quite a turnaround for the U.S. stock market. Stocks paring their declines. Yes, we're still lower across the board, but at the worst level of the day, we had the S&P down 110 points, down 4.2%. S&P has narrowed that loss now to 26 points, down by 1%. The Dow, which had been down almost 1,100 points at the worst level of the session, now down 357 points. That is a drop of 1.7%. And NASDAQ is down 131 points, a drop there of 1.7%. 10-year yield, 0.70%. Gold is down 0.5% right now, down $7.50 the ounce at $16.23. And West Texas Intermediate crude now lower by 4%, $21.70 a barrel on WTI. So stocks paring declines after Congress passed a $2 trillion stimulus package meant to blunt the economic impact of the coronavirus. The president's going to sign the measure, 4 o'clock Wall Street time. So a down day, though, but quite a recovery. Dean Kernett is the CEO of Macro Risk Advisors.
It's probably too early to say, we're out of the woods. I don't think you want to do that. But there is an unfreezing of certain risk metrics that we look at on the risk side that has got a little bit of a reason for optimism. But I do think it's too early to be fully confident that we're out of the woods.
President Trump is blasting General Motors for its response to the coronavirus epidemic, saying it is not moving fast enough to manufacture hospital ventilators and wants to charge too much, and he threatened to force the company into action. General Motors shares lower now by 3.4%. Again, recapping, it is a down day for the U.S. equity market. 26 minutes to go ahead of the close, with the S&P down 37, a drop right now of 1.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Massar here with you on a Friday afternoon. And let's get to the next thing. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, indeed. We have Dave Wilson.
We have Dave. We've got our lighters going. We've got the boss. Dave Wilson joins us from New Jersey, his home state, the boss's home state. What's Bruce singing about there, Dave?
He's singing about this depression. Now, we later found out from his autobiography that he might well have been talking about his state of mind at the time, but that's not the context within which I'm presenting the song. It's more like a depression that's going on for energy stocks. And it was a chart yesterday that Michael Hartnett, who's the chief global investment strategist over at Bank of America, put in a report that really got my attention. What he did is he strung together a couple of energy stock indexes and basically found that if you look at the group relative to the S&P 500, it's now at its lowest level in relative terms since 1931. So we're talking about the middle of the Great Depression. Now, some of the data he used isn't readily accessible on the Bloomberg terminal, but I did grab the S&P 500 Energy Index, which goes back to 1990, and put that up against the S&P 500 so you can see how it is that the group could have gotten to the point where it's a depression-like kind of decline. That ratio between the energy group and the S&P 500 down 85% at its worst from a high back in July 2008. And that low was reached in the middle of last week. So I'll tell you, you talk about a rough stretch for an industry group. The energy stocks have certainly been through it. And as much as we're looking ahead to the possibility of a recession for the broader economy, you could say that these stocks are acting like a depression now. And if you want to know more, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
So, Dave, if you really want to be a contrarian here, some might say there's incredible opportunities in some of the energy names.
Oh, absolutely. And Hartnett kind of made that point. He talked about being a secular contrarian. Whenever you hear the word secular in that context, you're talking about a move that plays out over several years, 10 to 15 years. And if you think about, the decline from the high for the energy group relative to the S&P 500 I just mentioned, that's lasted over 12 plus years. So it certainly qualifies. And at least in his view, if you're figuring you want to go against the crowd now, maybe this is a group to look at.
All right, Dave Wilson. Did you say all right, David? I said all right, David.
Jinx.
All right, Dave Wilson, we very much appreciate all your hard work this week. Hope you get to listen to some Bruce on vinyl, maybe some more upbeat Bruce this weekend, just to, reverse the spirits.
Come on, a little bit of a downer.
I was hoping for some hair metal or something from Dave on this Friday. I always look forward to his songs.
I do too. I think I'm going to throw some music on when I'm done, get a glass of wine, and just dance around the house like a crazy woman. I'm just telling you. Not that that's
turn your camera off for that one, please. Thank you.
The camera will be, me, it's turned off as soon as I'm out of here.
Exactly.
It's blocked. We should remind everybody we are awaiting a playback of the president signing H.R. 748. We're talking about the CARES Act, which is the stimulus program over $2 trillion for large businesses, for small businesses, for individual, for employment benefits, unemployment benefits. And so we are waiting that, and as soon as that happens, we will take you to it.
We will indeed, and we'll get you to the drive to the close as well, as we've been talking about what a week when it comes to the equity markets. And later on, we are also going to, most likely, we don't know the exact time, it's supposed to be at 5, catch up with the coronavirus task force. Those briefings have been really important in news making, as you know.
I was adding up for the week. The Dow looks like it's up about 15%, S&P up about 12%, NASDAQ up about 11%. We still have about 20 minutes to go here in the trading session, and we do know that investors were pulling back a little bit in today's session after 3 consecutive days of gains, but we are seeing we're coming off our best levels of the session here, but quite a bounce back so far this week, Jason, in terms of what we've seen for market momentum. We'll have to see what next week brings, because as we hear from various governors and mayors, we know that certainly here on the East Coast we've got more problems to come.
Also going to hear from Steve Ballmer. Remember him?
Yes.
CEO of Microsoft, formerly, now an NBA owner. Let's get to Bob Moon in the meantime. He's got your world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, it is known as H.R. 748, the CARES Act, the biggest financial rescue package passed by Congress in U.S. history. President Trump is set to sign the measure about 20 minutes from now. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports it was passed with strong bipartisan support by the House earlier this afternoon.
The House voted after closing remarks by its leaders, Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
The American people deserve a government-wide, visionary, evidence-based response to address these threats to their lives and their livelihood, and they need it now.
Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
For those battling the virus, or lost your job, or do not know if you'll have one a month or two from now, I want you to know we're listening. We hear you, and we are working for you.
Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
And just breaking on the Bloomberg, the Fed is to reduce the daily pace of Treasury buying to $60 billion April 2nd to 3rd. 4 passengers have died aboard a Holland America cruise ship now anchored off the coast of Panama, and 2 people aboard the ship have tested positive for the novel coronavirus. The cruise line says more than 130 people aboard the Zaandam have reported flu-like symptoms. The ship is receiving medical supplies and medical personnel from another Holland America ship. The company plans to begin transferring healthy passengers to the other ship. Both are anchored off the Pacific coast of Panama. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household.
even friends and family. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Listen to Raj go. Polyrhythm, paradiddle. A drum solo so epic, he nearly forgot his mum's birthday back in Delhi. Good thing Raj has Western Union on his phone and can send money quickly online. Download the app today. This service is provided by Western Union. FX gains apply.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential and change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all are lower. Federal Reserve will reduce the daily pace of Treasury buying to $60 billion April 2nd and 3rd. That's according to a headline right now on the Bloomberg Professional Service. Stocks lower. S&P now down by 60 points, a drop right now of just about 2.3%. Did see some recovery at the worst level of the day. We had the S&P down 4.2%. Stocks, though, pairing declines after Congress passed that $2 trillion stimulus package meant to blunt the economic impact of the coronavirus. Treasuries gained. Oil slipped. President Trump will be signing of that package coming up at 4 o'clock Wall Street time. S&P again down 65, down 2.5%. The Dow now down 708 points, lower by 3.1%. NASDAQ down 220, a drop there of 2.8%. 10-year up 1 and 22/32 with the yield now 0.67%. We've got gold down 0.5%, 16.23 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down $1 a barrel. That is a drop of 4.4%. Oil, a big story today, $21.59 right now on West Texas Intermediate crude. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the drive to the close. Emily Rowland is with us, head of capital markets, co-chief investment strategist at John Hancock Investment Management, on the phone from Boston. Emily, nice to have you here with us. So, interesting week, a little bit of a breather, it feels like. When you look at the financial markets, the equity markets, the credit markets, do you feel like things are functioning as normal as they can be in this situation?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think certainly, as it relates to fixed income markets, it was pretty jarring for investors over the past couple of weeks to see their bonds, or what's supposed to be the ballast of their portfolio, not really acting as diversifiers the way that they are supposed to. So on those days where we saw the big declines in equity markets and seeing bond yields actually back up, was a pretty remarkable thing to see. And it really had a lot to do with investors just trying to raise cash and a lot of selling pressure in the high quality bond market. Now, of course, we've got, the Fed reacting to this, throwing the alphabet soup at the different types of liquidity measures that they've put into place. And that has restored some order to the fixed income markets. And we do think that bonds can continue to act as that ballast of a portfolio heading forward.
So, Emily, give us a report card for the Fed so far. I mean, we've heard a lot of praise for Jay Powell and the team. The Fed presidents have been out talking. We had a couple exclusive interviews with them, with, I believe, Mr. Kaplan and Mr. Bostic today here on Bloomberg. We played that out earlier. How do you rate the Fed here?
Yeah, I think they're doing an exceptional job. I mean, they've reiterated that they're going to do whatever it takes here to prevent a, sinister type of credit crunch or solvency issue. They can't prevent a recession from happening. We are likely in one or entering one right now. But they're almost acting as if this is a wartime type of environment right now and really throwing everything that they can. I've been very busy trying to learn every single acronym here. And again, the Fed is working hard to kind of deliver the liquidity that the markets so desperately need.
Is the Fed's cure worse than the disease?
I think that's the key question. I mean, you think about the fact that we're going to be continuing to grow the amount of debt that's the U.S. has been implementing for a long time now. I mean, you look at the debt to GDP ratio for the U.S., we're right over 100% right now. Certainly that's going to grow, probably not to the levels that we've seen in places like Japan. But that's going to be an issue that we need to contend with down the road. Right now, I think there's much more pressing matters. And again, that's really about providing liquidity and the Fed doing whatever it takes to be there for the markets.
And so, Emily, how much do you worry? I feel like we've heard a fair bit today, especially as stocks across all the major indices have traded off, about kind of a double dip, or certainly this sort of roller coaster ride that we're in for. How do you plan for something like that? How do you sort of position yourself correctly for that potential scenario?
Listen, trying to call the bottom in markets is a futile effort, and I commend people that are trying to be precise in doing it, but it's really challenging. So our view is that you need to dollar cost average into this market so you can have the ability to participate, but also have some protection there. We may have further to go here in forming a durable bottom. The low point in markets usually comes when the economic data bottoms. We're about to get some really ugly economic data. We probably need to see the number of cases in the U.S. peak. We're still at least a few weeks away from that. And then sentiment. I mean, sentiment is not, fully washed out here. I'm hearing from a lot of advisors that I talk to every day asking me, where can I put money to work? How do I, should I go into cyclicality? How do I play this? I would look to see people become completely pessimistic before I would say, hey, look, we've seen capitulation. This is a durable bottom. I'm open to it. I hope we get there soon, but we might have a little bit more pain here as we try to form that bottom.
I want to go back, though. Do you think the U.S. is headed to being Japan?
I think you can talk about that. And yes, Japan, we've got this low growth, low inflation. environment. But if you think about it, Japan actually hasn't really done that poorly. You look at, their GDP. Yes, it's 1.5% a year. Is that great? No. They've had a great employment market. They've had a strong participation rate there, and all the predictions of this kind of fiscal catastrophe that everybody's talked about with Japan really haven't come to fruition. So is it great that we're increasing the deficit? No. Would it be a disaster to be Japan? Maybe not.
But I do wonder about the Fed getting into other areas of buying. I mean, typically they can't do any buying unless it's, securities that have a government guarantee. And yet we understand that the Fed is moving way beyond that. And I do wonder about, what kind of danger we get into. And I do wonder ultimately what's the responsibility of especially those bigger corporations to be ready to have some kind of safety net.
Yeah, I mean, the Fed has definitely done some extraordinary things. I never thought I would see the day where they were buying corporate bonds and even corporate bond ETFs like LQD. This is pretty remarkable. But back to Japan, we still haven't gone as far as Japan. I mean, they've been buying equity ETFs for a decade now. So there's still some unusual tools that the Fed hasn't even come close to using here. But again, I think they're doing whatever it takes for now. There's still things kind of in that bag of tools that the Fed could bring out. But for now, it looks like they've done a really nice job restoring order to the markets.
But bottom line, we don't want to become Japan. This is not the model that everybody. Okay.
No, we don't. But it hasn't been the disaster that I think it's made out to be. And in fact, a low growth, low inflation environment, it does punish favors, but it's actually been a good environment for both stocks and bonds if you think about it over the last number of years until very recently.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Emily Rowland is co-chief investment strategist for John Hancock Investment Management, joining us on the phone from Boston. We hope you have a safe and healthy and hopefully restful weekend. I think we can all use a couple days to kind of catch our breath, Carol, as we look around and get through this week, which really was something. And we're just a few minutes away from the close of trading.
I have this gorgeous bird outside my window. Let me just say, spring is in the air. Fingers crossed that things are going to get better. Folks, we'll count you down to the closing bell on this Friday and take a look at some of the movers and shakers. Yes, this is Bloomberg.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all declining on this Friday. Turned out to be a winning week. Stocks dropped after Congress passed that $2 trillion stimulus package meant to blunt the economic impact of the coronavirus. President Trump scheduled to sign it at the White House at this hour. Treasuries gained, oil slipped. Let's begin with the equity close here with the S&P down 88 points, a drop today of 3.4%. The Dow lower by 930 points, down 4.1%, and NASDAQ dropped 295 points, a decline there of 3.8%. 10-year up 1 and 18/32 with a yield of 0.68%. Gold down 0.6%, 16.21 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude lower today by 4.4% at 21.60 a barrel. Dow Jones Industrial Average posting its biggest weekly gain since 1938, but again, a down Friday here with the Dow dropping 930 points, a drop there of 4.1%. Emily Rowland is co-chief investment strategist at John Hancock Investment Management, and moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week, she had words of praise for the Federal Reserve.
They can't prevent a recession from happening. We are likely in one or entering one right now, but they're almost acting as if this is a wartime type of environment right now and really throwing everything that they can. I've been very busy trying to learn every single acronym here, and there again, the Fed is working hard to kind of deliver the liquidity that the markets so desperately need.
Oil tumbled as prices got a 1-2 punch from collapsing demand due to the coronavirus crisis and ballooning supply from producers vying for market share. West Texas Intermediate crude lower today by 4.5%. Yep, there's an app for that. Apple has joined technology giants such as Alphabet's Google in launching COVID-19 screening tools for users to help curb the spread of the coronavirus. Apple shares lower today by 4.1%. Alphabet, parent of Google, down by 4.4%. Recapping, S&P down 88, down 3.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Shake it, blue thing, yeah, yeah.
Oh, come on, shake 'em, not stir.
Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, movers and shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, time to take a look at the stocks on the move and take a look at really your big picture. Charlie, of course, breaking down how those major equity averages finished on this Friday. As for the S&P 500, most names lower today, 430 to be exact, 73 higher, 2 unchanged. But I also want to get to those weekly overall numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up almost 13% this week. The S&P 500 looking at a gain of more than 10% for the week overall. The NASDAQ, it posted a gain of 9% for the week overall. And I have to say, Jason, it was higher, but I feel like in that last half an hour, we did see stocks in particular kind of move off the highs of the day and move towards their lows of the day to finish kind of on a down note. I mean, down overall, as we know, for the full day, but really taking it down lower here in those last few minutes of trading.
Yeah, I mean, without being too silly about it, I mean, people are exhausted, you know, and I do think that having gotten through the rescue package, having gotten through, you know, everything that the Fed continues to do, and I thought that was a very strong endorsement from Emily Rowland just a few minutes ago about what the Fed has been doing, and an opinion that I think a lot of people have. I think history will be, as if things continue to go this way, very kind to Jay Powell. You know, this is a guy who had the wherewithal. We talked about this earlier on in the week to go on
The Today Show.
The Today Show. Sorry, I almost said Good Morning America. Sorry, Today Show.
But in terms of news, right, that's mass market in terms of people, everyday folks are watching that, and they have a huge audience. And so he reached out to the American public is what he did by doing
on the day, and I think this is notable, on the day that we were about to get this massive record-setting jobless claims number that he knew, just on the headline alone, was going to maybe rightly freak people out. And so he provided some assurance. And, someone sent me a note. Actually, I think it was Carl Riccadonna in our Bloomberg Economics team, our chief U.S. economist, pointing out the idea that Jay Powell is a banker. He is trained as a banker. He was a partner at Carlyle Group. He is a creature of the financial markets and the financial services industry. He understands this in a way, and interestingly, Riccadonna made the comparison to Paul Volcker, who also had to manage through some crises in his time. In any case, you want to talk about some stocks?
Yeah, I want to talk about the number one gainer in the S&P 500. Check it out. Not a name that we talk about. It's a $12.4 billion market cap company. Ticker is EXR, Extra Space Storage. It's based in Salt Lake City. It's, a real estate, it's a REIT. And it owns and operates, develops, redevelops self-storage properties, right? Those places where you can go store all your junk, basically. And what's interesting is if I look at the major industry
one man's trash is another man's treasure. Come on, Carol.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. I know that all too well. But what's interesting is if you look at the major industry groups in the S&P 500, there are 11. At the top was utilities, which showed about a 0.5% gain today. The second was real estate. So those REITs, those real estate names, doing much better. And some of this has to do with what's being done in the commercial real estate market. And so shoring that up. But anyway, that stock was your number one gainer in the S&P 500. And that stock was up about 7%. We got to do this headline.
Yeah, this headline. We were talking about this earlier in the show. Trump telling GM to make ventilators under the Defense Production Law. The DPA, we've talked about the Defense Production Act. He has signed it but hasn't really enacted it. As far as we know at this point, he is enacting it after a very, shall we say, nasty back and forth between GM and the president. The president tweeting pretty aggressively and personally against not only the company, but its CEO, Mary Barra. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Basically the president telling the private sector, and in particular telling General Motors to go ahead and do this. And by doing that, I think that the government backstops them in terms of here's what we need, here's where it needs to go. So it's really important. All right, let's get to the volatility index report on this Friday. And Jason, that number in today's session, it is up 6.6%, closing at 65.07. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with us with his stock of the day. I feel like I told you to have a good weekend too early. Hi, you're back.
Well, that's okay, Jason. I'm back for one more, and it's Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. It's a Boston-based publisher of textbooks and other educational materials. While the company's history goes back to 1832, its current business reflects a deal made in 2007. That's when Houghton Mifflin bought Harcourt from the Netherlands Reed Elsevier and changed its ticker to HMHC. The name changed, too. Houghton Mifflin Harcourt shares peaked at a record in June 2015. Since then, they've fallen for 4 straight years. The slide has accelerated this year as the coronavirus has led to school closings. The stock's been down as much as 73%. While Houghton Mifflin rebounded as much as 34% this week, the shares gave back the entire gain and perhaps then some today. They retreated after the company withdrew earnings and revenue forecasts for this year, as well as 3-year targets. Those projections were made just a month ago. Houghton Mifflin also said it's cutting executive pay and other costs, putting off capital projects, and borrowing $100 million from a credit line. In response, the company's shares tumbled 25.5%, and yes, they did indeed end up with a loss for the week.
All right, Dave Wilson, now I will wish you a happy weekend. Thank you so much for that stock. So, Carol, as we said, sort of taking stock, as it were, of this week. And, it'll be interesting to see what next week brings, because it's not going to be as legislatively driven, shall we say?
Unless they move on to phase 4. And
True.
they may need
Good point.
they may need to do that sooner rather than later, although I do wonder how much of a phase will be after we get out of the virus and get back to work to assess what else is needed to kind of jumpstart the economy. But, let's not forget, we're going to get a weekly jobless claims report next Thursday that is going to be shocking once again, and certainly bigger than this week. All right, let's get to world and national news headlines. Let's check on in with Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Carol, thank you. President Trump is directing General Motors to make ventilators under the Defense Production Law. This after he had criticized the automaker for not moving fast enough in making those ventilators. Acting with unusual bipartisan resolve, the House has rushed President Trump a $2.2 trillion rescue package he is set to sign at this hour, tossing a life preserver to the U.S. economy and the healthcare system reeling from the coronavirus pandemic.
A quorum is present. The motion is adopted.
The largest stimulus package in U.S. history is now headed to President Trump's desk. The House did hold a debate before putting the measure to a vote, and Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
Committee chairman outlined the provisions of the bill, including Representative Rosa DeLauro.
Last week, more than 3 million filed for unemployment. So the hour is dark. But today the Congress is ready to help get families, workers, and the country to the dawn of recovery.
Ranking Republican Steve Shabbat of the Small Business Committee.
Small businesses and their employees often rise before the sun and retire under the stars to ensure that their customers' needs are met and often exceeded. I want you to know that there is help in this bill.
Mostly, but not entirely, they avoided criticizing the other side while noting some compromises they wish they didn't have to make. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
And global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Bob, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Massar. Let's go now to Austin, Texas. That's where we find Elliot Savage, portfolio manager of the YCG Fund. It's a fund we're very familiar with, tracking closely the markets. Brian Yackman often joining us in studio, when we're in our studio. Carol Massar there in New York City. Elliot, great to have you with us.
Yeah, great to be here.
All right, so we're catching our breath, as it were, after this week. Just to start, what do you make of a week like this? How do you manage a fund when you're experiencing all of these headlines and also all of these just unbelievable market moves?
It's a really great question. And I think that the important thing is to just have a really sound strategy going into it. And so kind of our view is that, humanity will get through these problems, but what the ultimate economic fallout is, nobody knows. And that's kind of always how the case. And so that's why our strategy is to own a diverse collection of global champions with enduring pricing power and conservative balance sheets that can both participate in the long-term upside of global growth while also performing well on the downside and getting you through time periods like this.
So, Elliot, talk to us a little bit about your fund, the YCG Enhanced Fund. It is, I think, down roughly, I checked earlier in the day, about 18% this year. It's still beating most of its peers. It's still a top performer over the past 5 years in the 98th percentile. So give me an idea, in this environment, how do you approach it? Do you find opportunities, especially if you're looking, you guys, like value names and names that are less expensive. So is there something, have you been doing a lot of buying, especially on the market pullbacks?
Yeah, so I would say that if you have this portfolio that's kind of full of these dominant businesses with conservative balance sheets, then we think that investors tend to over-discount short to medium-term news, and that it's a good opportunity to trim some of the stocks that are outperforming and to add to some of the ones that are underperforming. And so we have been finding value. We recently bought more Nike as it got cheaper, and people kind of freaked out about the fact that global sports are kind of ceasing for a period of time. So that would be one example.
Well, and the real estate world, I mean, I find so fascinating. Carol was talking as we were going through the movers and shakers about, you know, a REIT EXR, I think is the symbol that was doing especially well. I mean, real estate, I think, is an area that you guys have looked at as well, right?
Yeah. So the stock that we've owned for a long time and that we're adding to right now is called CBRE. And what they've been able to do is create a global network of commercial real estate buyers and sellers. And the great thing about them is that they essentially act as a toll taker on global commercial real estate activity over time. But they're also in a position where they own de minimis amounts of the underlying real estate, and they have very variable cost business model. And so they're able to kind of sail through this kind of period. Their revenues will be down, but they're not in kind of the danger that some of the other commercial real estate people who actually own the buildings are in. And so they'll emerge even stronger from this crisis than they were going into it.
And go to, I think, another name that you guys have been buying, Copart. CPRT is the ticker. Tell us a little bit about this one. It's based in Dallas, and it plays into the automotive sector. Yeah. So so Copart is the largest auction company of salvaged vehicles. So they basically have this network that connects buyers and sellers of totaled vehicles. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about the unique nature of this crisis is that Copart's typically a recession-resistant business, but because of everybody being on lockdown, very few people are driving, and so number of accidents has gone down dramatically. But that's only a temporary phenomenon, and they have rock solid balance sheet, especially relative to their biggest competitor, and that will enable them to emerge even stronger. And we think it's a really good deal right now.
And so, sort of going back to where we started a little bit, Elliot, you guys, we know, have a very rigorous process that you go through. How does the team work in sort of a time like this? And you mentioned sort of the global champions idea, but I do wonder if you're looking at different screens than you normally would, sort of managing all the headlines that are coming through from a news perspective, beyond what you might normally look at.
Yeah, I would say that while we're all working from home, it's sort of business as usual in terms of just owning these great businesses and then using the market volatility to really take advantage by taking some off of the ones that are least affected and adding to some of the ones that are most affected. And I would say that we have added a couple names in the we've added a name in the travel space. So Amadeus, which is the biggest airline reservation system connecting travel agents to airline reservations. But again, we're doing it from that perspective of wanting to own these dominant networks that are capital light in industries that over the long term are going to grow at least as fast as GDP and that can survive even severe recessions.
All right, going to leave it there. Hey, listen, Elliot, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And great to hear that you guys are, how you're assessing this market and actually finding some opportunities. Elliot Savage, portfolio manager of YCG Enhanced Fund. As I mentioned, that fund has been a top performer over the long term over the last 5 years in the 98th percentile, joining us on the phone from Austin, Texas. Let's check in with Charlie Pellet. He's got to check on your top business story. Some of the headlines after that closing bell, Charlie.
Stocks sold off into the close after the Fed cut its buying. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping. It was, however, a winning week for the U.S. stock market, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average registering the biggest weekly rally since 1938, pointing to all the volatility we've seen over the past 5 trading days. S&P fell 88 points today, down 3.4%, ending the week, heading into the weekend at 2541. NASDAQ down 295 points, down 3.8%. Dow Industrials down 915 points, a drop of 4.1%. 10-year yield 0.67%. Gold down 0.5%. 16.22 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude, big sell-off there today, down 4.6%. Too much oil, a price war, and lower demand WTI now at $21.56 a barrel, referring to West Texas Intermediate crude Brent down by 6%. So again, recapping the equity numbers for you, S&P down 88 points today, a drop there of 3.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, we miss a lot of our colleagues, I think, hanging out with them in the studio. It's fair to say. I got to tell you, one of the ones I miss the most, Matt Boyle. Love that guy. He covers the retail space, does such a good job. I also run into him every now and again at rock and roll shows. He's a good music fan. He also lives not that far from me. He joins us on the phone from Harrison, New York. Matt, how are you?
I'm good. I also enjoy going to rock and roll shows with you, like Chuck Berry and all those rock and roll shows.
You guys are showing your age.
Oh boy, it's not actually Chuck Berry, but one of the things you are obviously keen on understanding, as always, is the supply chain and the way that the retail business is working. And we talk so much about consumers and what they're buying and what they're not buying, but there's a whole world sort of behind the store, and that's what you get into in your story today. Tell us about sort of the trucking piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, we've been doing a series of what we're kind of calling the Great Restocking. I mean, everyone is, of course, going on and on about shortages of toilet paper. So we're trying to sort of, peel the onion a little bit and understand this better. And I've been hearing from some people I talked to in the supply chain community that New York City, which, of course, is the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, they were having trouble just getting truckers to deliver shipments of groceries to supermarkets. Now, you could say, well, it's always, challenging to get a big truckload of tomatoes into Midtown Manhattan, and that's true. And we do not want to say at all that, that there's groceries are growing scarce in New York. But I came across an index of basically rejection rates. Truckers or carriers basically saying, no, we don't want to haul that load into New York City, and that index had tripled in recent weeks. So that kind of got my attention. So we started saying, okay, well, why are they declining to take these loads into the city? And one reason we found out was that when the White House said that anybody, leaving New York City had to be self-quarantined for 14 days, that got some truckers spooked. They started thinking, does that mean, if I go into Manhattan, deliver some groceries and leave, do I need to then go home and self-quarantine? And that is not the case. The CDC did come out just yesterday to say, look, that self-quarantine mandate does not apply to people delivering much-needed supplies into the city. But that said, it's just another headache that New York City grocers do not need. I mean, it's never easy being a grocer in New York City with parking tickets and all that, and it's just getting tougher and tougher. So that's one thing we delved into yesterday. It's just kind of showing that even though there's plenty of groceries to go around still, despite what you may see on your shelves, some trucking carriers are just saying, we'd rather just take that shipment elsewhere.
I got to say, Matt, I am blown away by my little market up the street, that there's a continuous flow of folks coming in, bringing in food, and those workers are there. I'm just kind of blown away by it and grateful, to be quite honest with you. It does feel like, too, there's a coordination and a cooperation that's happening between some of those big grocery wholesalers. I think you write about it in your story about, people maybe sharing some workers as needed.
Exactly. They're sharing workers. I spoke to CNS Wholesale, which is a big grocery wholesaler. They're basically borrowing workers from U.S. Foods, which is another food wholesaler, but they sell largely to restaurants. Well, guess what? Restaurants are not ordering a lot of food right now. Many of them are shut and laying off people. So CNS is essentially borrowing workers, and that is a lot easier and more efficient than just pulling people off the street and hiring them and onboarding them. They're bringing in experienced people who know what they're doing. So that's one thing they're doing. Another thing they're doing is they're talking to manufacturers and saying, look, we do not need the chili, garlic, lime flavored ramen right now. Just the basic flavors of whatever you got, and you can amp up production of those basic flavors. That'll make your manufacturing easier. You'll have fewer changeovers. Manufacturing changeovers take time, and they're tough, and you got to wait for those things. And then, of course, it's easier to restock when you're only getting 2 different flavors of ramen or 2 different types of toilet paper versus 18 or 20 that you'd normally see.
All right, Matt Boyle, always good to catch up with you. Stay safe out there, and we really appreciate this work. It's incredibly important. I feel like if there's one theme that we've been hitting on throughout the show, Carol, it's this notion of the food supply. I mean, we talk about restaurants, but also as we continue to see the essential services like grocery stores remain open, and we are seeing some restocking, and I loved what Matt said about the great restocking. I'm really glad they're focusing in on that. You want to turn to the banking sector now?
Yeah, I do, because, Jason, we've been told this isn't a financial crisis, and yet there are definitely strains in the financial system and on specific communities, whether it's small business or, as we've been talking about, the restaurant community. Frank Sorrentino is CEO at Connect One. It's a small cap, publicly traded community bank. It is based in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. We find Frank on the phone in New York on this Friday. Frank, nice to have you back here on Bloomberg. First of all, how are you doing? How's your family doing? How are your workers doing?
Thank you. It's great to be back on Bloomberg, and thank you for that. Everyone's doing really well here, and fortunately, our entire family at Connect One Bank is doing extremely well. So,
does that mean they're all Does that mean they're all working? How are you? How are you guys?
Yeah. So we were able and are able, through technology, to be able to have our entire company continue to work. We did close a number of our branch locations, our retail branch locations, either because they were in close proximity to others, or where we might have had some challenges relative to keeping those branches open. But every single employee at Connect One Bank is fully employed and is working hard, either working from home or working from some of those locations.
So, Frank, one of the reasons that we were excited to talk to you again is because, as we understand it, banks like yours are going to be, as Carol alluded to, at the core of what happens next, the next phase of this rescue package in many ways. Help us understand, as I keep saying, and Carol's teasing me a little bit about it, the mechanics of this. How is this going to work in terms of small businesses and businesses of all sizes sort of getting the money they need from the government?
Well, I think I think we are at the tip of the spear. Banks always were the lubricant for the economy, and I think it was very well evidenced in the financial package that is being, approved today, and we'll get the president's signature, called the CARES Act through the SBA, where it's really a payroll stimulus package that's being administered through the SBA, through banks, to support small businesses so that they can support their employees, and so that those people can then in turn pay their rent and pay their electric and buy their groceries. So as you can see, that has a multiplier effect as opposed to just handing checks out. Running loans and liquidity through the banking system for the benefit of our businesses is probably the best way to keep things moving. And I applaud the administration. I applaud all those that were part of it. I applaud both houses in Congress for getting this done with the speed in which they did, and the thoughtfulness about how to get the best bang for the buck here.
So what are the mechanics? Do small businesses, any small business in your community or in your world, just reach out to you and you're going to help them get those funds?
Sure. So there's a number of things going on. One, certainly all of the clients of Connect One Bank are going to be encouraged to reach out to us. We'll be doing that by the end of the day today, even in anticipation of the bill, even though all the parts of the bill haven't been completely finalized and the rules aren't written yet. We're going to start reaching out to our existing client base to say, hey, if you're impacted by this, and a great number are, here are the parameters of the bill, right? So, you will be able to borrow up to 2.5 times your monthly payroll from the SBA in a non-recourse loan, and any of those proceeds that you use for staff that you wouldn't normally employ in this time because you're closed or you have operational issues, and your rent and your mortgage payment and your lighting bill and your insurance bill, you'll be able to deduct those off the balance that you owe to the government. So this is a really great way to get money back out into the economy and support our local businesses and their employees for the next couple of months.
What's a non-recourse loan? I mean, I'm reading the definition. It means...
Well, non-recourse means that you don't have personal recourse to pay it back. And so...
But we hope you do. But we hope you do.
What's that?
But we hope you do.
Well, again, this is tailored for businesses, for the most part, that have been shut down. So I heard you speaking about restaurants before. So if you have a restaurant that was forced to close down and they, are going to let their staff go because they have no revenue, they'll be able to take this loan, keep their employees on the payroll, continue to pay them, and they will get we will be able to lend them money in order to do that, and then they will be able to keep that staff employed. Those people will get paid for the next month or two or whatever, and then that will become a deduction off the loan. That business owner won't have to pay that back.
And is it that's right, and that's a key piece, right? That those loans can be forgiven, right?
Yeah, I think it's an enormous piece of this. It's that if you borrow the money and it's used, for a business that's operating, it's a low interest loan. If you're using the money to support your business because you're experiencing hardship here because you're closed or you reduced hours or whatever it is, and you can demonstrate those hardships, there's going to be a direct reduction for that.
Listen,
so we're going to go out to our clients with that. We also have a sister company we announced, last year.
Frank, we have to jump in, and I apologize, but we do want to thank you for finding some time for us. Frank Sorrentino, the CEO at Connect One, and we do know Emily Chang is getting ready to sit down with Steve Ballmer, of course, the former head of Microsoft, but also owner of the LA Clippers. So let's head over to Bloomberg TV, and I guess we're waiting.
Yeah, we're not quite ready for that. We are anticipating that. We're also waiting on word from the White House because the president at this moment is signing the bill, I believe, and we'll bring you those sounds when we have them as well. So let's head to Emily Chang now with Steve Ballmer.
With us, I want to ask you about a very important initiative you've been working on via USA Facts. You started this organization to dig into data, and you've been digging into data about the coronavirus, whether it's hospital beds or the number of students on free lunch across the country. You're releasing a slew of new facts today. Talk to us about what the data is telling you and surprising trends that you are seeing.
Yeah, let me share a little bit. As you mentioned, we started USA Facts, focused in on taking government data and publishing it. Obviously, the topic of the day is corona. And one of the things that I find fascinating is how hard it has been to really surface and bring together data about the disease all the way down to the county level. We have essentially been sourcing data not only from the CDC, but from county health departments, bringing it together and publishing it on a county-by-county basis. We've actually had inquiries from over 20 different government agencies, including the CDC itself, for this amalgamated view of the information. I think it's a thing that points to the importance of really integrated government data telling us a story.
So then what story is the data telling you? We've all been overwhelmed by facts about the curve and rising numbers of cases. In your estimation, from what you can see, how much worse is this outbreak going to get?
Well, that would imply I'm some kind of forecaster. We don't do that in general, and specifically in this area, I wouldn't do it. If you take a look, though, on a county basis on what's going on, you certainly continue to see counties in which the rise of new cases continues at almost an exponential level. In King County, Washington, where I live, which was the epicenter of the outbreak, we've actually started to see a gradual, if you will, flattening out of the curve, which leads me to believe I can have some optimism, not that people aren't going to suffer gravely from this disease, but perhaps there's light at the end of the tunnel here, more similar to what people saw in South Korea and China than what people are seeing in Italy. But you can look at the county data and get a sense that with the right precautions and work, there's opportunity for progress.
You're also looking at the industries that'll be hardest hit, whether it's the airlines or hospitality, restaurants, food services, the food service business. Where do you think we're going to see the biggest brunt of this economically?
Well, I want to highlight food service. Over 8% of people employed in America actually work in the food service industry. And by that, I mean restaurants, bars. We're not just talking food development, food growing, food distribution, but actually food service. 8% of the population. And while it's not that big a share of GDP, and people normally look at the GDP numbers, from an employment perspective, where I think the rubber will meet the road in terms of how well people live. People have to keep their jobs. People have to have sick leave. Obviously, with the new Senate deal that was approved yesterday, there's certainly government relief coming. And we're diving into that and bringing together on USA Facts the relevant data. But if you just take a look at that food sector, 8% of all jobs, these are low-paying jobs, typically without sick leave. It's a very scary economic proposition.
Steve, what's your view on the markets going forward? I mean, nobody knows exactly which way this is going to go, but, obviously I know you're still a huge holder in Microsoft. Microsoft has managed to stay above that $1 trillion market cap, but even Microsoft hasn't been immune to these huge and volatile swings. What do you see in the bigger macroeconomic picture and for big tech?
Again, not necessarily a prognosticator, but at the same time, I think it's fair to assume the markets will stay volatile. I think the markets will stay depressed, if you will, for some time. I think tech specifically from a P&L perspective, depending on where you are in tech, is likely to get hit less, if you will. Certainly software services, Microsoft Office, Azure, the ones I love, Amazon's AWS, Zoom, will continue to get used, maybe even at a higher rate during this time of crisis. One thing I've been watching, Zoom is a competitor of Microsoft Teams, and I noticed Zoom stock has almost been counter-cyclical during this time, and certainly is one of the few stocks that's moved up as we see more and more people work from home.
So, look, the president is speaking very optimistically about reopening the economy potentially by Easter. You've got health experts who are saying that's just far too soon. Who's right?
Well, in general, I believe in the scientists, if you will, but I do think there's a good point here. There's really a three-step cadence that we need to see. Number one, we have to do the things with urgency that the scientists tell us to do to hit the flattening of these curves. Number two, we really do have to take care of people economically right now. The economic hardship is too punishing. And then number three, we can't forget, we do need to restart the economy. It's getting the cadence of those things right that's so important. And I think the gate, if you will, needs to be what the scientists tell us on the front end. We're giving people the money. Thank goodness the Democrats and Republicans have been able to agree on that. But we've got to be ready, not rush it, be ready for that third step, which is to reignite the economy.
Now, I've got to ask you about basketball, Steve. You're the owner of the LA Clippers. Of course, the NBA has suspended the season. The league is working on estimates for what losses this will mean. And I know you've done the math. What kind of projections are you seeing in terms of a loss that this means for the Clippers? And what's the most likely scenario for resuming the season, whether it's in Las Vegas or otherwise?
Well, let me answer the second question first. League office is certainly working on thoughts about where we go from here in terms of a season or whatever may be possible or probable. And I won't choose to comment on that. I will say it'd be great to play some basketball, but only if the time is right and the circumstances are right. In terms of the Clippers, we are being diligent about continuing to pay our employees. We're even, especially for the smaller vendors, we're fortunate. We're deep pocketed. We're trying to take care of our smaller vendors. We had a t-shirt vendor we had $100,000 committed to for playoff t-shirts. Well, I think it's important that we pay that money, put it down now, and see what can happen over time, since we are in a little better position. Yes, we will lose money. And I think at the same time, that's going to be true for a lot of businesses. I've been very fortunate in life. I want to make sure that we help take care of not only our own employees, but the population that we can. Certainly at Staples Center, where we play our games, we made sure to pay all of the staff that works game days, not just our own employees, because those folks were counting on that income through the end of our season.
Any idea how much money, Steve?
Well, let's just put it this way. Let's just put, you have to. It'll be 8 digits. How's that? Now, you got to start with what we were going to either make or lose before the season started. But net, it certainly will be an 8-digit loss for us, i.e. 10 million
Steve
plus.
Ballmer, appreciate you joining us. The founder of USA Facts, owner of the LA Clippers, former CEO of Microsoft. Steve, thank you. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thanks.
All right, Emily Chang, thank you so much. Our Emily Chang at Bloomberg Technology, speaking with, of course, Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft, owner of the LA Clippers. So really getting to hear a business perspective, a market perspective, and, of course, a sports perspective in terms of, Jason, the impact that he has seen and what he thinks is to come in terms of an outlook.
Right. Well, and listening to what he said about the NBA, obviously everything that he was saying about science also very important. But for sports fans out there, there is this implication, and certainly people who follow the business of sports, there is this question of how much is going to be lost. And he basically said more than $10 million is going to be lost just in revenue for the Clippers alone. Yeah. So, all right, let's head to the White House now. President Trump signing that bill. This is playback.
Ever signed. It's $2.2 billion, but it actually goes up to $6.2 potentially trillion dollars. So you're talking about a $6.2 trillion bill, nothing like that. And this will deliver urgently needed relief to our nation's families, workers, and businesses. And that's what this is all about. And it got a 96-0. And I don't know, what was the number in Congress?
Voice the vote.
The voice was fantastic.
I think just as close.
That's pretty amazing. That's about the same thing, right, Kevin?
Yes.
So that's fantastic. But I want to thank Republicans and Democrats for coming together, setting aside their differences, and putting America first. This legislation provides for direct payments to individuals and unprecedented support to small businesses. We're going to keep our small businesses strong and our big businesses strong. And that's keeping our country strong and our jobs strong. This historic bill includes the following. $300 billion in direct cash payments will be available to every American citizen earning less than $99,000 per year. $3,400 for a typical family of four. So family of four, $3,400. And then $350 billion in job retention loans for small businesses with loan forgiveness available for businesses that continue paying their workers. The workers get paid. Approximately $250 billion in expanded unemployment benefits. The average worker who has lost his or her job will receive 100% of their salary for up to 4 full months. So things like this have never happened in our country. $500 billion in support for hard-hit industries with a ban on corporate stock buybacks. We don't let them buy back the stock. We don't let that happen. And tough limits on executive compensation. Over $100 billion to support our heroic doctors, nurses, and hospitals. And you see what's happening. And I want to thank, while we're here, also the incredible job that's done by the Army Corps of Engineers and by FEMA. It's been incredible. They did 4 hospitals in 2 days or 3 days in New York, and they're like incredible structures. What a job they've been doing, and they're doing them all over the country. $45 billion for the Disaster Relief Fund, supporting our state, local, and tribal leaders. $27 billion for the development of vaccines, therapies, and other public health response efforts, including $16 billion to build up the strategic national stockpile with critical stockpiles. And we have tremendous supplies coming into the stockpile, and you'll be seeing that and hearing about it a little bit because we're doing a news conference at 5:30 on what's happening. We've had tremendous results on the respirators. We've had great results on just about everything we're talking about. Boeing just announced that they're going to be making the plastic face shields, the actual shields, which are hard to come by, and they're going to be making them by the thousands a week. And the ventilators, which is probably the most difficult because it's like building a car. We will be announcing thousands of are going to be built, and we have them under contract, and we have fast deliveries. As you know, we delivered thousands to New York, and unfortunately they were delivered to a warehouse, which was good. Unfortunately, they didn't take them, but now they're taking them. New York is now taking them and redistributing them around the areas that they need. So you have also $3.5 billion to states to expand child care benefits for healthcare workers, first responders, and others on the front lines of this crisis, and $1 billion for securing supplies under the Defense Protection Act. And as you know, I've enacted the act. We've used it 3 or 4 times. I pulled it back 3 times because the companies came through in the end. They didn't need the act. It's been great leverage. I have instituted it against General Electric. We thought we had a deal for 40,000 ventilators, and all of a sudden the 40,000 came down to 6,000. And then they talked about a higher price than we were discussing, so I didn't like it. So we did activate it with respect to General Motors, and hopefully maybe we won't even need the full activation. We'll find out. But we need the ventilators. I said hello today. I called him a wonderful guy, Boris Johnson. As you know, he tested positive. And before he even said hello, he said, "We need ventilators." I said, wow, that's a big statement. And hopefully he's going to be in good shape. I just spoke to Angela Merkel, and she's quarantined also. She is right now for a period of 2 weeks being forced to stay in her house. So this is just an incredible situation. Last night I spoke to President Xi. We talked about the experience that they had in China and all of the things that have taken place, and we learn a lot. They've had a very tough experience, and they're doing well, and he's doing well. President Xi is doing very well, but we learned a lot, and we have great communication together. We're going to be sent great data from China, things that happened that they see that they've had an early experience, and we're getting all of that information. Much of it has already been sent. It was sent yesterday and sent to our scientists to study. So we'll have more on that also. We'll be discussing that at 5:30. I just want to thank the people behind me. They've been incredible friends. They've been warriors. There's nobody tougher or smarter than the people standing alongside of me. And I think I want to start off by asking Mitch and then Kevin to speak, and then we're going to go through a few of the folks in the room if they'd like to say something. But Mitch, I'd love you to say a few words, because this man worked 24 hours a day for a long time. This is the result. It's the biggest ever approved in Congress, $6.2 trillion. So, we used to get used to the billion. It used to be million, then it was billion, now it's trillion. And it's going to go a long way. It's going to make a lot of people very happy. Mitch McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, let me just say this is a proud moment for our country, for the President, the Republicans, and the Democrats all pulled together and passed the biggest bill in history in record time. I also want to thank Kevin McCarthy and our leaders on the Republican side in the House who helped speed this through to passage. The American people needed this rescue package. They needed it quickly, and we delivered. It's a proud moment for all of us. Mr. President, thanks for the opportunity to be here.
I'd love to shake your hand, but Anthony would get angry at me if I did. So I better not do it. I can't. It's so natural. I just want to go back and shake his hand. They've done such an incredible job. Kevin, please.
Yeah, I do want to start. I want to thank all. The real answer to America is we're listening to you. You do your part, and we're going to do ours, and that's exactly what's happening today. What Leader McConnell did was amazing. He made it bipartisan, bicameral. Everybody was involved. I wish we could have signed this earlier this week. Maybe there wouldn't be as many people who are out of work, but this will put people back to work. I also want to thank Secretary Mnuchin. You've done an amazing job, and we thank you for that, and all the team that's here. Look, as I said in my speech, the virus is here. We didn't ask for it. We didn't invite it. We didn't choose it, but we are going to defeat it together because we're going to work together. And this is the first start of it. The hospitals will get money, the money they need. The small businesses will be able to hire their employees back. That is a grant. You don't have to borrow from that place. The other businesses get a retention to keep your employees on. This has something for everything. And to the task force and the vice president, all the work that you're doing with this president, this will be the needed resources you need as well. And so thank you for that, and thank you for your leadership, Mr.
Very
President.
special. Mike Pence, Mike, could you please say something? You've been working very hard in charge of our task force. And then I'd like to ask Steve to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for giving me the opportunity just to express all of our appreciation and the gratitude of the American people for the accomplishment that's reflected in the legislation that you'll sign in just a few moments. You told the American people that we would do whatever it takes. You called on the Congress to step forward to make coronavirus testing free for every American, to make paid family leave available. The Congress, with the leaders gathered around us here, stepped forward in a bipartisan fashion and delivered. But today, every American family, every American business can know that help is on the way. And I want to thank Leader McConnell for his yeoman's work in really forging a bipartisan bill in the United States Senate. I want to thank Leader McCarthy for his great work. But as the President said, I also want to thank the Democrat and Republican leadership across the House and Senate. This is an American accomplishment. Mr. President, it's exactly what you asked the Congress to deliver for the American people.
Thank you very much, Mike. And Steve Mnuchin, you know how hard he's been working. And Steve, please say a few words.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your leadership and for the Vice President's leadership. You made it very clear to us last week we should think big, that this was a war on the virus, and that we should have the resources to protect American workers and American business. And I'd like to thank the Senate. It was a great honor, Mitch, to work with you and everyone on a bipartisan basis to get this done. This is going to be a great thing for the American workers. And Kevin McCarthy, thank you for all the work in the House did to pass this quickly. So at Treasury, as I've said, we are committed to move forward quickly, and we're going to get money in people's pockets quickly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Great job, Steve. Gene, please.
This is a great day for American workers. Protecting American workers, American jobs has been a hallmark of this presidency, and this bill today is another very important step in that direction. It includes unprecedented support for American workers who've lost their jobs through no fault of their own, but because of this virus, and gives them as near as we could the same wage they would have gotten through unemployment insurance if they'd been able to keep their jobs for up to 4 months. I think even more important, it includes $350 billion in loans for small business, but structured in a way to incentivize them to keep their workers on payroll so that those loans can be forgiven at the end of the period. And it comes on top of legislation the President signed last week for paid leave for workers who have to be at home because of the virus. Paid leave reimbursed in full, dollar for dollar, to the employer. It's the first federal paid leave law for the private sector ever, and that also was achieved on an unprecedented bipartisan basis. This is the third major bipartisan piece of legislation in 3 weeks, 3 bills, 3 weeks, to address this virus. So again, I want to thank the President for his leadership, his commitment to American workers, the Vice President as well, and Leader McConnell, and also my colleague, Secretary Mnuchin, who did work so hard to help you get this done.
Dr. Fauci, you may want to just say for a minute what hit the world. Something hit the world, and the world maybe will never be quite the same, but we're going to make it a great place anyway. But certainly you can maybe say a few words about that.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank everyone involved in this. This is what America is all about, a bipartisan approach with your leadership to do something that's sorely needed by the American people. Dr. Birx and I and all of our medical people here are fighting the virus directly, but the virus has an impact on the American people, both directly by illness and death, but also indirectly because many of the things that we have to do to suppress the virus has a negative impact because of what we're doing. To give them relief economically is absolutely essential. So I feel really, really good about what's happening today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Deborah, perhaps you could say a few words also about it.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Fauci covered it very well. As many of you know, I worked for him and he was my mentor 40 years ago. I think whenever we start with one of these very serious diseases and a pandemic, The president's first goal was ensuring the health of the American people, and that's why we put out these very strong guidance. It's been a pleasure to work with the economic team here because they understand data in the same way. Economic data and health data is very similar in how you have to interpret it in a very granular way. And I think recognizing that the health of the American people is first, but the economic value of the nation is also critical. And I just want to thank all of you for what you've done for the American people today.
Great job you're doing, too. Thank you. Kevin, please.
So just 20 days ago, I don't know that anyone could have imagined how hard we'd been hit, medically or economically. But 20 days ago, I don't think anyone could have imagined Congress pulling together so quickly and so forcefully behind what the president identified we needed for this country. This is a proud moment for all of us, and it's just an example of what leadership can provide here in the White House, and then how we can respond as a Congress. So thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership.
I'm just saying, as Kevin's saying, that 20 days ago, a couple of days longer than that maybe, we had a smooth running, beautiful machine. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We had the highest stock price we've ever seen. It went up, I think, 151 times during the course of the presidency. And then we got hit by the invisible enemy, and we got hit hard. But it wasn't just us. It was 151 countries as of this morning. And you call Germany and speak to Angela. She's in quarantine. And as you know, Boris was diagnosed that he's positive, and all of the things that are happening, it's hard to believe what's gone on just in a short period of time. And because of the talent behind me and lots of other talent in government, what we've done, this is a big part of it, obviously, but not the biggest part. Everybody's pulled together. Our nation's pulled together. The spirit is incredible. The people have pulled together more than anyone and better than anybody, and they're doing really, really well. But just to think how life can change, where you go 20 to 22 days ago, everything's perfect. We're looking forward. I'm saying, when are we going to hit 30,000? I want 30,000. That means more jobs and more everything. And then one day we get hit with this thing that nobody ever heard of before. Nobody ever even heard of before. And now we're fighting a different battle. But I really think in a fairly short period of time, because of what they've done and what everyone's done, I really think we're going to be stronger than ever. And we'll be protected from a lot of this. A lot of the things, Anthony, that we've done now, that we're doing now, are going to protect us in the future if this should happen again. From testing to so many other, even stockpiles, right? Vaccines. Yeah, the vaccines, hopefully, and vaccines, cures, therapeutics, whatever you want to call it. It's a lot of progress. And I think on that score, I think we're making a lot of progress on vaccines. We're making perhaps a lot of progress on cures and therapeutics. We'll be letting you know. Anybody else have anything? Greg, please. Go ahead, fellas.
I would just say I've never seen you shy away from a challenge. Your leadership and your policies and this great team brought America this enormous economy, and guess what? You get to do it again. And this bill is the next step in that, and we can build back this economy with your leadership and with the healthcare team you've got here, too. We're doing the right things for the American people, and they know that. I can tell you that from the ground. It's not easy. No, it's not easy. We don't want to shelter in place as Americans. We want to be out, especially in the Northwest. Yeah. But we know we have to do this for the safety of our relatives and families and our community and our country. So thanks for your leadership and the great team you've assembled.
Appreciate it very much.
Yeah. On behalf of small businesses, they're the backbone of the American economy. About half the people that work in America work for a small business, and they're hurting out there right now. I'm from Ohio. I'm the ranking member of the House Small Business Committee. And back there, non-essential small businesses are shut down. Without this legislation, it's questionable whether they would reopen. Because of this legislation, they now have a great chance of that. And those people that work for small businesses or are shut down will be paid. That's really important. This wouldn't have passed without your leadership, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, you know, Eric worked so hard. You all know Eric. And he was at Steve's side the whole way. And where's our man? Do I see Larry? Yeah, Larry. The two of them. How about Eric? And then Larry, say a couple of words. And
well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I really appreciate it. And Mr. Vice President as well. So you encouraged your team to be bold, be brave, and go big. And we certainly delivered today. $6.2 trillion is tremendous. So we've made sure that we can reassure Americans that their paycheck is protected and that their earnings are protected. We've made sure that we can provide significant reinforcement to the American economy as a result of your leadership. And finally, looking ahead to address the virus, we've included significant resources in order to ensure that those therapies and ultimately that vaccine can come online as quickly as possible. So protecting the public health and protecting the economic health of America is what you've directed us to do. And together with the team, we worked hard to deliver today. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
And Steve is going to work very hard at getting the money out quickly, and hopefully it can be distributed very quickly, especially when they have some old computer equipment that they have to use. But you're going to work on that very hard.
Indeed.
Larry, please. Larry.
Oh, thanks, sir. Just hats off to Mitch McConnell. Did an amazing job. And House leadership as well. And I agree with the bipartisanship. I want to give special thanks to my friend Stephen Mnuchin, who I think did an extraordinary job. We were up there helping him out in one spot or another, but he's indefatigable and got it done. And I'll just say this, Mr. President. A few months ago, this economy was roaring, and we've hit this, literally this bug, this virus, and we will deal with it. And I think the assistance bill here, which does have growth incentives, will help lead us back to a very strong economic rebound before this year is over.
I think that too. I think we're going to have a tremendous rebound at the end of the year, toward the end of the year. I think we're going to have a rebound like we have never seen before. Even now, it wants to rebound. You can see it and feel it. It wants to rebound so badly. And, we've had those really big, I guess the biggest ever stock market surge 2 days ago, and yesterday was great. 3 biggest days in the history of the stock market. It wants to rebound so badly, but we have to get rid of the bug. We have to get rid of the virus. Now, I'm going to sign this, and it's a great honor. $6.2 trillion. I've never signed anything with a T on it. I don't know if I can handle this one, Mitch. We can't chicken out at this point. I don't think so, huh? All right. Thank you all.
You have been listening to President Trump signing the bill that we have been talking about all week. A lot of members of his own party, members of Congress there in the White House, in addition to Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, who have become familiar faces to everyone here in America. And very jovial mood there in the White House, I dare say. Carol, the president, making a joke about shaking hands, president making a joke about signing something with $1 trillion. So a sense of relief, certainly, that they got this over the line, but a long way to go, for sure.
Well, and let's remind everybody, this was a playback. So the president signing it, about half an hour or so ago. $2 trillion, $300 billion in direct cash payments to individuals, $300 billion for small business loans, $250 billion in expanded unemployment benefits, $500 billion for hard-hit industries, and about $100 billion for the healthcare industry. So this is a massive, massive program. Let's bring in Jordan Fabian. He's Bloomberg White House correspondent, joining us on the phone from Washington right now. So, Jordan, a lot has been talked about in terms of this bill and this law now. What's your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is, of course, this is the largest stimulus in U.S. history, but it might not be enough to truly rescue the U.S. economy. Even though we're talking about a $2 trillion package, you have lawmakers and leaders on Capitol Hill like Nancy Pelosi saying that another round still might be needed. So while this was quite a heavy lift, you had really intense negotiations all week here in the Capitol. You could see lawmakers back at the table within the next few weeks and months, depending on how the economy performs under the strain of these coronavirus-related restrictions.
And so, Jordan, what is your sense of what may need to happen next when it comes to more assistance, fiscal stimulus specifically, or some other aid that the government needs to provide? Where is the administration's head on that?
Well, the president and also Larry Kudlow, his chief economic advisor, have both said they're willing to do essentially whatever it takes to ensure the economy won't collapse. So they seem open to the idea. But of course,
it all depends on where the priorities lie. Nancy Pelosi has talked a lot about needing more aid, possibly for low and middle income Americans. Where the administration will be on those finer points, we'll have to see in the next few weeks.
So it's interesting. Yeah, I do wonder about, even the workings of the government over the next few weeks, right? As more members of Congress come down with the virus, what are some of the conversations that you're hearing around that and the logistics working, the mechanics, as Jason and I like to talk about in terms of this stimulus program, but what about the mechanics of the government continuing to work?
Yeah, you raised a really good point there. Even today, we saw an example of that where there was one sort of rogue Republican member of Congress, Thomas Massey, who invoked the rules saying that lawmakers can't just pass this by voice vote in a pro forma session. They actually need to come back to Washington and vote on this thing. So you had hundreds of lawmakers, coming back from their home states where, like you and I, they're spending time at home trying to socially distance, and they had to return, and it was a big deal. It caused a lot of anger among lawmakers, and so it really depends, I guess, how long these restrictions remain in place, because if you have a situation where lawmakers need to rush back to the Capitol, the Senate's going to be gone for the next month or so, it could cause a lot of anger and a lot of frustration and just practical difficulties. So I think that lawmakers hope that this is good enough for now, for the next few weeks, and then maybe they'll be back at the table next month.
All right.